Professor Godfred Bokpin joins us on the phone. He's a professor of finance at the University of Ghana. Prof, it's a pleasure to have you. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, and good morning to our cherished listeners.
Great. So, Prof, I mean, you've listened to the governor of the Bank of Ghana. He's explained particularly the losses that we've all complained about. Are you convinced now?
No. I sympathize with the central bank. I understand that they find themselves in a very difficult position. As managers, your natural inclination is to push back, is to try to explain. But losses are losses. You can disaggregate the losses. There are some perhaps accounting treatment, fair value through profit or loss or other comprehensive income. But let's look at it from a more professional and technical point of view. And then I will refer you to the IMF supported program, the document. If you read the program, you will see the adversarial position the IMF has taken on some of the measures Bank of Ghana has implemented so far, essentially reversing some of them. Exchange rate management, monetization of the public debt, deficit financing, and all of that. Then also, you go back to the beginning of 2021, when inflationary pressure started broadly. You could see clearly that the central bank was technically behind the curve. From a professional point of view, that is not so acceptable. And it's simply because of the accommodating posture of the central bank to fiscal slippages.
No, hold on. When you say the central bank was behind the curve, what do you mean?
They fail to see the signal and to react appropriately or proactively. That tells you technically they were behind the curve.
Okay.
Then also, you see the double standards more or less that the central bank took. On one breath, you were injecting liquidity essentially by monetizing the public debt, monetizing the deficit. And then on the other hand, you were trying to use your monetary policy to mop up that same liquidity.
Let's break this down. Let's break this down. Prof, please, let's break this down. Yes. I want to get the understanding. Are you suggesting that by giving or by monetary financing, as in lending money to the government, the Bank of Ghana contributed to the high rise in inflation and then used monetary policy again in trying to mop up liquidity, and by extension leading to an increase in interest rates, which has hurt businesses and households? Is that the point?
Precisely. Okay. That's the point. And that is essentially what the IMF program is trying to reverse. So if you read the IMF supported program, their diagnosis of the issue and some of the steps that they have recommended, that is largely consistent with the position we had taken long ago. Winston, I think I said on Joy FM, maybe 6 months ago or so, that a time was coming where the story will be told of how regulators, the central bank, team up with politicians over champagne and messed up Ghana's financial system or sector. This was long ago. Look, it's not only that. You see, once we say this, we have to make the diagnosis objectively. And then also we try to understand the causes. As I said before, the fiscal policy side is to be blamed. But you could not build strong institutions without strong people leading those institutions and saying no to certain gestures, requests, and all of that. And that as a professional, if your understanding is that this was not acceptable, you resign and send a right signal. And I can sympathize with the governors also to some extent that if you check their statement 2.5 years ago or so, you will see that they have been uncomfortable with the way the fiscal side was being managed. But the point is that this monetary accommodating posture enables governments to spend because they know that there is a bailout secured. In that process, we deny private sector and households critical finance input costs. So put all of that together, and you come to the conclusion that a Bank of Ghana has not done well in all of this. To be very honest with you, that is my position. Now also look at, you sit down carefully and examine the role of the central bank in this domestic debt exchange process. Even with the first terms of the DDEP, December 5th, my considered view is that the central bank had not done any serious analysis, impact analysis, stress testing of how this was going to impact the sector. At the time, they were encouraging the banks to sign up, so much to the extent that they had risk-weighted the old bonds at 100%, and risk-weight the new bonds at 0%, essentially coercing the banks to sign up. So, as a regulator, you protect the sector you regulate. So, in as much as I sympathize with the situation, my considered view is that the central bank failed to protect the sector they were regulating and ended up failing to protect itself also.
Prof,
and remember, the losses we are talking about here, these are reserves built over the years, and within a single year, everything is gone.
Prof, we are told that they didn't print any new money or create any new money, since sometimes it's electronically done. Is this plausible to you?
So in the literature, you find monetary financing essentially from two angles. One aspect we call quantitative easing, which is not exactly the same as helicopter dropping of money, which essentially means printing and just distributing. But there is an inflationary outcome, inflationary pressure that you create by that process, especially if that injection does not go to the productive sectors of the economy. You create that inflationary process. And I'm sure when you read the IMF supported program and other documents, you will see how that had ensured that inflation was way up there and the policy rate was way behind, right? And given also the fact that the fiscal side wasn't responding appropriately, obviously, the outcome can no longer be unexpected.
And Prof, I want to talk to you about the calls for the governor and his deputies to resign by the minority. Do you think this is just?
I had said this a little earlier before the minority came into the picture. So my position, whatever I say now, is not to support them or to oppose their position, but as a professional and academic, I have held a view that professionally, I felt long ago that the governor should have resigned, or perhaps should resign, because it just doesn't speak well. Overall, it doesn't lend to building institutions, strong institutions as checks and balances. And I think that, and I'm saying this because it's my disappointment, because I have so much respect for the governors. I mean, just look at where they've worked, their CV, their qualification, their experience, their exposure. So I had so much expectation. I had so much confidence in them, but I think that confidence has been wounded.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to Professor Godfred Bokpin. He's a professor of finance at the University of Ghana. He's analyzing the governor of the Bank of Ghana's statement yesterday regarding what led to the 60 billion Ghana cedi losses and the construction of the $220 million headquarters.
Yeah, so Prof, I mean, let's look at one thing. Yes, the governor has talked about how they are very policy solvent. But let's look at what this could have, the impact it could have on the financial sector and by extension, the economy. What the losses that the Bank of Ghana has incurred, finally.
Look, we have said before that this very act and its publication now exposes the central bank to public opinion and public analysis in a way that we have not seen before. So today, the central bank is being discussed literally, not even as an AOB, as an agenda item. Okay? And then also, if you look at what has happened, some of the expenditure items and all of that, actually, it undermines the confidence that we all have in the central bank. That is one key thing. The essence of regulation is to generate trust. In assessing the market value of trust, it's more obvious in its absence. So it undermines the moral authority of the central bank. And that is not good enough. You can, even if you say you are policy solvent, to some extent is debatable because it depends on how you are assessing it and the variables that you are using. But how the market is also looking at it, how other partners are also looking at it, may be different, and you don't have control over that. Okay, and that is why, for instance, when you are managing your inflation, the focus is more about the inflationary expectation. Okay, and that you want to be able to position your monetary policies and such that you'll be able to anchor that inflationary expectations. Once you lose that, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. So I think that, and we should not underestimate the impact of this on our economy in terms of our financial system, confidence, correspondent banking, and all of that. I think it's quite huge. It's quite. We can use words to try and explain that. Central banks make losses. Of course, businesses also make losses. There are certain losses that raise these questions, and how those losses came about, and how quickly you can recover from that, and the implication. Remember, the central bank is the lender of last resort. And we have used this argument before that in this domestic debt exchange, the IMF and the multilateral institutions ring-fenced their debt because they felt that as a lender of last resort, their balance sheet should not be impaired. So they excluded their debt. And we have said that because the government did not make the much-needed progress with the domestic debt restructure, especially the first round, when we claimed victory, and also the pushback. And if you analyze the external side, because you can gauge the mood of the investors, the investor sentiment. If you look at the external side, both external bilateral, external commercial in terms of the Eurobond, and then you look at the other component of the domestic debt left in terms of pensions, cocoa bill, the dollar denominated, and the rest of you realize that there was no way the country could make significant progress on our debt sustainability pathway without sacrificing the balance sheet of the central bank. And that is what we have done. That is what we have done. And it's going to take us years to recover. And all of that will contribute to the slow recovery of the economy. We can't take that away from what has happened. And remember that the economic recovery we are talking about is not just GDP picking up. We are looking at recovery that is broad-based, recovery that ropes in low and moderate income earners, recovery that solves poverty, recovery that narrows inequality, recovery that we all can celebrate. Nobody is going to celebrate GDP growth because that is insufficient. We can't identify with that GDP. You check the data. Between 2013, 2012 and 2019, nearly 20% of our GDP growth came from mining. And then you can also look at the hydrocarbon sector, oil and gas. Meanwhile, within that same period, these two sub-sectors essentially recorded low growth in employment. So where is the employment dimension of the growth process? That is lacking. Okay, and then look at the horizon. The UN, the World Bank are telling us that our population by 2040 will be 45 million. 58% of that population will be less than 30 years. They probably will be exiting our free senior high school half-baked Quantity, we have checked the box. Quality-wise, we are in doubt. Not even that we are in doubt. It's not there. And all of that. And all of them will be entering the labor market. And the World Bank is telling us that from now to 2040, Ghana needs to create 10 million decent jobs, especially in the formal wage economy. The question we need to ask ourselves is, how do we create that with the system that we are putting in place right now, with the way we are going? We will be unique to expect a different outcome by doing these things and then expecting that certainly inclusive growth and development will just drop down from the sky. Okay? Countries that developed, they were intentional. They created the wealth. They created a system that enabled inclusive growth, that enabled job-rich growth. We have celebrated jobless growth for some time now. So we need to move on. The fixation over GDP is over. Okay. We need to look at critical key performance indicators that is contextualized, that reflect the dynamics of our society, the population structure. Currently, we have revised our GDP growth to 1.5%. The population growth rate is around 2%. Technically, our economy is in recession. How do you explain that?
Prof, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We're very grateful to you. We'll come back to you later. That's Professor Godfred Bokpin, who is Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School.